He was the king of cocaine, the real Tony Montana of Scarface, and the most dreaded man in Colombia. He was Pablo Escobar, one of the first billionaire drug lords of Colombia's notorious Medellin. This guy had so much cash stashed away, he would spend thousands on rubber bands alone to bind his stacks of bills. Pablo Escobar might have been worth $30 billion, which is what the official figure says. But allegedly, he had almost $500 billion in cash hidden somewhere, and today that is the holy grail for all treasure hunters. Where is Pablo Escobar's $500 billion hidden? Escobar was the king of Medellin. In 2020, Nicolas Escobar, the nephew of Pablo Escobar, found an unbelievable $18 million hidden away in the wall of his apartment. Nicolas lives in a house that was once owned by the late drug lord in the town of Medellin that was under the tight grip of Escobar, while it was almost the entire country of Colombia who answered to the kingpin. He was the king of Medellin. The $18 million that Nicolas found was peanuts compared to the real wealth of Escobar. The drug lord had a habit of hiding his money in several places. Was the cash stashed away in some secret vault in the walls of one of his properties? Perhaps it was buried in some underground chamber. No one knows, but treasure hunters are always on the lookout for incredible wealth. Who was Pablo Escobar? Before we send you off on a treasure hunt, here's what you should know about Pablo Escobar. The man was notorious and infamous in Colombia. He was the supreme and undisputed leader of the famous Medellin cartel that ran a drug trade worth billions. The majority of profits came from transporting cocaine and other illegal drugs into the United States, where Escobar ran an efficient and well-organized network that used ground and air routes for transportation. The transportation network also included ground tunnels, which is a favorite means of smuggling drugs, since they cannot be detected. Only recently, authorities discovered one of the largest tunnels in existence, believed to be a route used by another drug lord, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. The tunnel was 4,309 feet, connecting Tijuana State in Mexico to San Diego in California. The tunnel had a lift, rail track, drainage and air ventilation systems, and high-voltage electrical cables. A notorious rise to fame and fortune. Pablo Escobar's rise to fame and fortune was a fast and bloody one. He had no qualms about eliminating those who stood in his way, a characteristic that was recognized by the drug lords he worked for when he was younger. He was ruthless, efficient, and got the job done. Escobar's big break came in the early 70s when he took over from Medellin drug lord Fabio Restrepo, who was murdered. Escobar had amassed a strong gang of thugs by then and took over with little resistance. From then on, there was no stopping Escobar. Within a few years, in 1976, he established the famous Medellin cartel and would go on to become the most powerful man in Colombia and the only billionaire drug lord in history. Throughout the 80s and the early 90s, he was smuggling almost 80 tons of cocaine into the U.S. No one knows how much he really made. It was impossible to figure out how much Escobar actually made, although some say it was close to $30 billion. Escobar's Medellin was smuggling over 80 tons of cocaine into the U.S. and making $420 million a week. Escobar went to extreme lengths to organize his money and keep it in different places. He even made it to Forbes' list of billionaires for 7 years. And though he was public enemy number 1 for the U.S. and the country's most wanted criminal, in Medellin he was king. To keep the locals happy and earn their loyalty, he built churches, schools, stadiums, and parks. He was even recognized by the government and earned a seat on the Colombian Congress. He lived a lavish lifestyle. Escobar lived life on a huge property called his Spanish-styled Hacienda Notables, spread across 7,000 acres of land. There is every possibility that some of his wealth may be hidden on the ground somewhere, which is a huge possibility. It was no secret that Escobar had a thing for organizing his cash and spent $4,000 a year on rubber bands alone to bind the cash and stash it away. It was alleged that Pablo Escobar buried gold and wads of cash from his $500 billion drug fortune in secret locations, then shot the men who did it to keep the location secret. What was weird was Escobar never kept maps to his buried treasure. He kept it all in his head and felt that it would be a fantastic retirement plan, although he didn't take into account that he might forget or the possibility of his arrest and life imprisonment in jail. Although most of his money was never found, Nicolas was super lucky to have found the $18 million. He had nowhere to keep his money. Nicolas even worked for Escobar and can tell you some pretty shocking and scary stories about him. Besides $18 million, Nicolas also found incredible valuables like a gold pen, satellite phone, a typewriter, and undeveloped rolls of film. The $18 million was stashed in bags, and while they were removing the money, there was a horrible stench. And knowing the way Escobar operated, it isn't hard to guess what organic matter was buried along with the money. Escobar's biggest problem was where to keep all his money. The cash was literally oozing out of his ears, and it's not like he could walk into a bank and dump a few $100 million on them. It was all illegal drug money, and he had no transaction receipts or accounts for it. No bank would have touched his money, which is why he had to resort to alternate and rustic means to stash it all away. Treasure hunters galore. Escobar did manage to funnel a good chunk of his fortune into Swiss banks where only he knew the account number, which means the money is lost for good. The rest of the money has sparked off a huge treasure hunt by individual treasure hunters and even the CIA. Two CIA operatives, Doug Locks and Ben Smith, embarked on a dangerous mission of finding Escobar's lost billions. The hunt took them across the scariest neighborhoods in Colombia, where they came face to face with some of Escobar's most dangerous gangsters and assassins. Even though Escobar lived a lavish lifestyle of parties and buying up property, cars, yachts, and planes, he still had tons of it. He even gifted his children with priceless real dinosaur fossils to play with. According to those who worked with Escobar, he would wrap the money in huge stacks and bury it in plastic barrels or metal boxes, along with thousands of gold bars where he felt they would be safe. Escobar's brother Roberto, now 72, who worked as the Medellin accountant, served 12 years in jail. After being released in 2004, he revealed that Escobar earned so much that 10% of the money would have to be written off because it was either eaten by rats or damaged by water or lost. Escobar needed to find ways to carry all the money he made and once even planned to build a fleet of submarines to smuggle cash and powder, an idea he got after watching James Bond movies. He had money hidden in all of his homes. It has often been rumored that Escobar has hidden much of his money in several of his homes across Colombia, Mexico, and Florida. This has triggered a modern-day El Dorado-style treasure hunt, where many treasure hunters have embarked on Indiana Jones-style adventures to find Escobar's treasure. One famous team consisted of Scots Guard John Miller, who masterminded the kidnapping of great train robber Ronnie Biggs from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil in 1981. Miller, along with 6 SAS veterans, traveled to Colombia in 2009 to look for the hidden loot, but many close to Escobar denied all existence of it. One DEA agent, Steve Murphy, the man credited for finding Escobar for the U.S. government before he was shot on a rooftop in Medellin, says that the treasure is not a myth. It was a known fact that Escobar stashed away millions by wrapping up money and hiding it in caves, after which he would kill the laborers hired for the job. This is why no one really knows where his $500 billion is hidden. It could be all over the place. A farmer once found $623 million. One 65-year-old Colombian farmer, Jose Mariana Cartolos, found $623 million buried in hundreds of barrels in a field he was digging to start a palm olive plantation. Cartolos had received a government grant in the form of land to develop a palm oil plantation. When digging the soil, he found containers brimming with cash. Finding $623 million in a field is a shocker for a poor farmer like Cartolos, and he reported it to the authorities. Unfortunately, he wasn't allowed to keep the money since it was suspected to be money hidden by Pablo Escobar. The money went into charity funding, but the Colombian government feared that the discovery would now encourage others to search for the drug lord's billions, since proof has been uncovered that the cash does exist. More millions dug up across the country. In 1989, 3 plastic cans were dug up from the ground with around $6 million in cash, while 150 kilograms of gold bars worth $35.6 million was again found in November of 1990. In 2009, another $6.9 million were found in a jungle that was a favorite haunt of Escobar. It was here that he set up several cocaine processing factories, so it isn't hard to guess who the money belonged to. During excavation work on his Hacienda Napoles ranch, workers found $13 million in underground safes built into the marble flooring and unusual holes in the walls which were most probably used to store money. Although the Colombian government has recovered only around $103 million, 10 times more than that could still be hidden waiting to be found. CIA agent Locks even filmed The Last Treasure Hunt, a film he made for the Discovery Channel, reporting that evidence of his $500 billion has been found all over Colombia. There have been plastic barrels of cash, gold bars, jewels, and even guns. He felt it was just a fraction of the drug lord's fortune because Escobar just could not keep the cash in banks or lying around. The only possible way was to bury it. And being an old-fashioned drug lord of the 80s, that's what all drug lords would do. They would bury their money hoping to cash in later as a luxurious retirement plan. It is dangerous to look for Escobar's hidden treasure. Hunting for Pablo Escobar's billions is no easy business. It is dangerous too. One location scout was killed in Mexico while looking for suitable places to film the popular Netflix series Narcos. This prompted Escobar's brother to issue a warning to the channel not to film in Mexico or Colombia without trained bodyguards. Do you think you would like to embark on a treasure hunt to find Escobar's $500 billion? Do not even think of it, and it would be a good suggestion to watch the other videos of Pablo Escobar on this channel. But don't forget to hit the notification and subscribe too.